All right. Hey, folks. I think people are maybe still trickling in. I'm not really sure, but I'm just gonna go get started. Just, I think, like Amanda said in the chat, just make sure to enter that PM Bootcamp giveaway. Here's the QR code. I'll leave it there for like one more second. Okay, cool. So yes, thank you for coming to this Ask Me Anything session about project management. My name is Vaibhav. I'll just do a quick intro before we hop into questions. So yeah, currently a project manager at Microsoft, worked at Samsung, and before that, I was working at a bunch of different startups and more technical roles. I mainly specialize in helping candidates on Leland from non-traditional backgrounds, as someone who's come from a non-traditional background myself. So yeah, open to any questions. I think I have a small topics page here, but really open to any questions, even outside of this. So feel free to drop any questions in the chat. So some topics, but not limited to, are breaking into PM, coming from non-traditional background, how to kind of shape that experience, different skills or that are needed or not needed for PM, interview prep, recruiting prep, what does just like work at Microsoft look like, and then also kind of just, work as a PM in general. What does that look like? So feel free to drop any questions that you have.
What area do you work in within the product? What team?
Yeah, so I work right now in OneDrive SharePoint, which is a pretty large area within Microsoft, over like 3,000 employees. Um, but specifically working on kind of the enterprise side and premium features. So amounts to a bunch of different stuff, but um, some of it is kind of like Copilot features, and then some of it is kind of a mergers and acquisition tool, so kind of data migration type stuff. And then I also work in kind of the privacy and compliance space. Okay, so I see some questions coming in. So, what's your feeling on the current market for junior/mid-level PM roles? Um, I'll say this, I think for PMs in general, regardless of all roles, um, there's always been a larger interest in the role than like roles available compared to maybe a job like software engineering or something like that. So it's really difficult just in general in terms of the demand doesn't quite meet the, supply of roles. Um, so yeah, that's what I'd say. And especially for junior and mid-level PMs, when you don't have like a super strong specialty yet, I think it can be kind of hard to present yourself in like the best way possible to land a role. Um, so I kind of see some questions about like skills, um, to pivot to PM or skills also just in general. Um, Generally, the job differs a lot from team to team, from company to company. But I would say like top things, and I've said this in other Leland chats before, is one is communication. And I think a lot of people think like public speaking, which is important, but also just like written communication. So whether that's emails, whether that's messages, whether that's even in your documents, documentation, all of that, your specs, all of that, the way that you communicate is like extremely important. And then I think the second skill that I would say you need is being able to talk to people from different disciplines. So maybe like whether it's having an engineering pedigree or a design pedigree, you don't need to be a designer, you don't need to be an engineer, but you need to be able to understand their language and interpret it in a way that like makes sense. Um, okay, I'm trying to see some questions. So I see some stuff about, yeah, so what skills do you wish, I guess going off of that, do you wish you could have picked up in preparation in uni? So a couple of things that I did in uni that helped was doing a UI UX design minor or informatics minor, I think it's more commonly called. but it was like a UI UX specialty. I think that was good because like I am definitely not a designer by like nature. I like do not have an artistic background. I don't have an eye for that. But being able to take like a class that was more structured and from people who are like very skilled in that area, being able to learn, day in, day out, about that was super helpful. And I think honestly, any type of class where you're building something, like building a product, building, even joining an organization where you're building an organization, growing an organization, all those things are like transferable to PM, I think. Um, so I see kind of how do you like working at Microsoft and anything you don't like about working? Um, well, I mean, I like working at Microsoft, but I think really like you're I guess the kind of like back and forth between whether you like the job depends on the different things that you prioritize. So Microsoft was super flexible with me working remote, which I really appreciated, and that was something that was really important to me. And I really liked that I was able to explore different teams. So since being at Microsoft, I've been on two different teams, originally on OneDrive consumer monetization, and now I'm on the team, as I was saying before, that OneDrive SharePoint premium space. Anything I don't like, I think this comes with any large organization. I wouldn't say just Microsoft, but any large organization, there's a lot of just like processes in place, for good reason because the features and products can have a large impact. But as a result, that means like pushing out a feature or pushing out a product will take a lot of time. And especially as someone who came from that like early stage startup space, it's kind of the complete opposite in terms of speed and even the way that you build product. Um, So I think there's a lot of questions being asked about how does one pivot from X to PM, so like software engineering to PM, or being a founder of your own startup to PM at big companies. Um, I would say it's kind of a little bit different depending on your background, like where exactly you start from. But one thing I would start with is like figuring out what your strength is, like figuring out what you already have like a deep understanding in. So if you're a software engineer, you already have hopefully a good, really good technical and engineering level understanding, and you want to date just good enough in other skills so you can communicate to those other people. So if you have a really good engineering background, then just like learn enough about the business impact and business side of things, advocating for the business to have that skill, learn enough about design, maybe do some projects, whatever it is, to get that design skill. And then same thing, with that data kind of side as well. What kind of questions are asked in FANG PM interviews? Few different types. The main one that I think most people will see is product design or product sense. Um, it's kind of a stereotypical example is kind of like design an X for a Y, like design a fridge for kids, for something like that. Usually about like 45 minutes, but there's other types of questions as well. There's obviously many behavioral questions. Typical, tell me about a time when blah, blah, blah. And then there's also product analytics questions, product execution questions, which are probably more what you'll see on like a day-to-day basis, as a PM. Okay, I see people saying, can you share your non-traditional path and what you think helped most in making the transition? Um, yes, so my non-traditional path, so in uni, I guess I should preface by saying most people who RPMs right now, or a lot of people who are PMs right now, come from a background of engineering heavy like degrees or just like work experience. So for instance, computer science or some sort of engineering degree. To the point where I would say even at Microsoft, since it's a more technical company, many people assume that every PM has a CS degree or has an engineering degree. But myself in college, I majored in business, economics, and philosophy, which is obviously not the most typical, background for a PM. So I think that's kind of where my non-traditional path started. Um, and what helped the most, I mean, I think being curious about like what the PM role entails. So I dived right into like a software engineering role at an early stage startup, kind of software engineering role. At early stage startups, you're kind of doing anything and everything. So I just really took the opportunity to learn like as many different disciplines as possible, I think. Um, the growing number of people. Yeah, I think this is kind of, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions asking about like how, how do you like get into a good company? Um, and whatnot as a PM and whatnot. I would say most of it is like the resume, as well as your background, obviously, but like 97% of people, especially for these top tier companies, are getting rejected at the resume. And also like applying early, as soon as possible, is kind of what I would say. I want to know how you can. Um, oh, this is a good question. Would you recommend trying to break into PM, especially from a non-traditional background, through startups or through bigger established corporates? Um, Really depends on what you want, but I would probably say startups is probably easier, or at least like smaller companies, because they're a little bit more flexible in their definition of PM and what they like are okay with PMs doing. So I think you can position yourself, especially as an early stage PM or breaking into PM, into a startup much easier if you're coming from a non-traditional background. I also think in startups, at least in my experience, a lot of it has to do with like your level of interest in the company, the mission, their stack, like all those different things. Whereas, that's I think a little bit less important in the bigger established corporations. Opinions on big tech apprenticeships for product management. How to get into it? I'm not exactly sure if this is what you're talking about, but um, apprenticeships, I'll say like anything along the line of like. Actually, I'm not sure what a big tech apprenticeship is. Now, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wrote that question. I think like I know Microsoft has like that Rise program that they used to do back in the day for like people want to break into like a data role or product management role and they come from like a non-traditional background. They have like these 16-week.
oh,
They're like
right. Yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about. To be honest, I don't have much experience with those. I'm probably not the best person to answer about that. I've seen some people have success with it, but I also know they're pretty competitive, generally speaking, because it usually also encompasses people who are, further along in their career. So it can be like anyone and everyone kind of can apply. I don't know if that helps, but um, let's see. What do you think helped you transition from a physical product versus what do you think helped you transition from a physical product versus software? Um, well, I guess to give some context, when I worked at Samsung, I actually worked on a software product. I worked on their e-commerce platform, specifically their trade-in platform. So like where you would, when you're buying a new phone or something, you can trade in your old phone and get a discount. So specifically that product. How important would you say having a portfolio is for breaking into PM? Do you have any recommendations for the best things to include in a PM portfolio? I wouldn't say it's necessary having a portfolio. I think the portfolio is really there as like supplementation. What do I mean by that? For instance, let's say you have a really strong design experience, but on your resume, you don't have strict like work experience as an engineer or work experience as a PM, obviously, then I think it can be good to have a PM portfolio where you're showcasing those skills that wouldn't jump off the page just from your work experience, right? So if you don't have business experience, if you don't have, engineering experience, those would be great things to do in projects and portfolio, that type of thing. But outside of that, I wouldn't say it's crazy. How would you say Microsoft builds product compared to how a faster paced startup builds? How much agency do you have over the strategy and the problems you solve? Yeah, to be fully transparent, Microsoft follows a pretty like top-down model. So you don't have like a ton of agency and autonomy, especially compared to faster paced startups and whatnot. Um, but you definitely within the problem space that you're working in, have a little bit control over the details and the granularity and whatnot, as long as you have a customer case and or just really a case at all, a data case, anything. And how would you say Microsoft builds product? Yeah, I mean, I was kind of touching on this earlier, but um, to give an example really quick, sorry, I'm trying to see if we're at the halfway point. I'm not sure if I need to, Andrew or Amanda, if I should take a second.
Yeah, if you want to wrap up this question and then we can move into talking about our boot camp for a minute before we go back to Q&A.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I'll wrap up this question. Yeah, so how does it build product? Yeah, just to give an example, it's obviously a lot slower, but what do I mean by that? So I think a lot of people are asking about AI as well and stuff like that. Um, since Microsoft works so much with other corporations and enterprise customers, it's really important on the compliance and privacy side that any feature, but really AI features as well, especially, are not breaking any compliance or privacy regulations. So that results in if you're trying to build an AI feature for enterprises, you have to go through about 20 plus reviews. And so those will be privacy, security, compliance, there'll be AI specific reviews. So it takes a lot longer. And it makes sense because once you release the feature and let's say it goes into the Copilot SKU, that's reaching thousands and thousands of customers with millions and millions of users immediately, right? So I think all of that, it makes sense why it's there, but yeah, it's just a trade-off in terms of what type of experience you want. Um, Andrew, I can pause for a second here if you want to.
Perfect. Yeah. If you want to hit the next slide. So at the beginning, we had that QR code and dropped in the chat that we are actually starting a PM recruiting bootcamp tomorrow. Obviously, these free sessions are great to help prepare for kind of recruitment season, but this bootcamp will actually dive pretty deep into like how to make that happen. So go look at the top of the chat or type in your browser bit.ly/LelandPM. And then if you could hit the next slide. Essentially what we do is instead of having just live webinars like these that give you some high level information, this whole I guess course will in bootcamp will take you deep into the details of like preparing for the interviews, the types of questions, your stories, strategies, and reviewing some assignments as well. And so it's a ton of sessions, and once again they're all inclusive to have incredible coaches like the one we have today, and people that have a ton of experience and have helped place people in roles. And if you go next, apart from having the live courses like we have this one, as you see, there's about 12 hours of live expert instruction through that, but then we'll also have, different mock interviews that you can do with assigned peers in your cohort. Once again, the built-in assignments, and you'll get a mock interview with the top coach, which once again, usually is quite expensive. Other coaching discounts and Leland Plus is I like our library that we have with extra resources. So once again, tons of value here in terms of all types of ways that you can learn and get ready and actually apply in PM. But if you hit next one more time, you'll see that we're actually going to discount this for everyone who's here in the chat tonight. As we're launching that tomorrow, we're trying to fill our last few seats. So I know one of you will win, the free boot camp, but everyone else will have the opportunity to purchase it for the price listed here. And then if you hit next one more time, once again, just go to this website. And then if you have additional questions, let me know. But you'll be getting, a text or email from me. And then if you have specific questions, let us know. But yeah, that's all I have. I'll turn it right back to you so you can continue the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Mhm.
Am I going back or forward? Okay, there we go. Okay, so I saw this question while Andrew was speaking about the bootcamp. What would you say stands out more when meeting with hiring managers, experience, portfolio, educational background? I would definitely say experience, like top and foremost, especially if you're beyond the like very early stage PM. As an educational background, like barely matters beyond your first PM job. Um, I've seen PM, hiring managers even from all types of backgrounds, and I really don't think like it makes that big of a difference. The educational background, at least, they're going to be talking mostly about your experience and what type of work you've done. Um, are there annual hiring cycles that some of these bigger companies to be aware of? Somewhat it depends if you're going for like APM or like very entry level PM roles, then yes, there's like very strict hiring cycles that they follow, with roles opening up as early as like July, or like even June now. But yeah, July, August, September, that's kind of when most of the roles are opening up for those APM and PM roles. But outside of that, it really kind of just depends on their fiscal year and when their new budget comes in and whatnot. Are there a lot of companies offering remote work? I would say the number is decreasing. Still a decent number, but yeah, it's decreasing compared to like, 2, 3 years ago or something. Is coding always part of the interview? No, I would say most PM interviews, especially now compared to 3, 4 years ago, there's less and less coding stuff and there's less and less technical stuff, unless you're obviously applying specifically for a technical PM type role or even just a project manager in a more technical space. Okay, let me scroll up here. So I see something here. How can someone who isn't deeply into coding or highly technical but loves learning and translating complex technical concepts into layman's terms break into the field? Yeah, so I mean, you don't have to be deeply, technical or anything like that, but I think anything that demonstrates that you can talk, translate these complex technical concepts into layman's terms, can be helpful. So whether it's a project, whether it's building your own website, or if it's as simple as like just any type of decks that you made, translating complex topics, maybe from a class or something like that. I think any of that can be helpful. Is it better to try different products early in career or stick to one product and try and learn as much as possible? Um, I think it kind of depends. I would say it's maybe a little bit better to stick to one product and then expand the different problem spaces you work there. One being is you want to get as much depth in at least like, a couple of pillars as much as possible in that one or two products. Really know the ins and outs, be that like status quo person to reach out to, while also exploring like different parts of the project lifecycle or B2C versus B2B, if that's possible, is kind of what I would say. But again, as in the beginning, like there's no pressure to be anything but a generalist, if that makes sense. Okay, let me see this. Um, I see a question a lot where it's, what resources have you leveraged to prepare for PM interview? Um, I assume it's asking me, in which case I would say when I was recruiting for PM a lot, this was before Leland existed, I would say. So if I knew Leland existed or if Leland did exist when I was recruiting, then I definitely would leverage Leland. Just so many helpful coaches, so many different people to utilize there. But honestly, I mean, YouTube is a great resource. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube about different PM interviews and whatnot. And if you can join, different groups, different communities that have people who are applying for PM roles as well, I think mock interviewing is super helpful. Of course, maybe the feedback won't be to the same level as someone who's a hiring manager or someone who is currently a PM, but for a lot of time, I think that can be super helpful, those type of things. And then beyond that, if you want like a better idea of what um, PM looks like and whatnot, or how to transition from this stuff, I would say there's a bunch of like free resources, or a bunch of resources out there like cracking the PM interview and whatnot, that I think can be helpful if you're just learning about like PM and whatnot. Um, any suggestions on transitioning from I assume this means project manager to a product manager role? I find the most hindering thing being the lack of direct experience related to product type successes versus
Yeah,
project.
so
Thank you.
most of my experience is project related versus product. So just in relation to how would I quantify this on a resume, or how would I speak to my capability to deliver as a product manager versus a project manager because of the division of what success looks like within the individual roles. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. So I think I would say like the type of work that you're doing as a project manager is like a subset of what you're doing as a product manager. So I mean, meeting deliverables and making sure a product is delivered on time and whatnot are definitely things that are part of a product manager, and obviously a project manager. But I think beyond that, I think thinking about product sense and why are we building a product the a way that we are, like what is the reasoning there, what is the opinion there, being able to talk to different customers and like capturing insights from like, should we build X or should we build Y? And what is the reason for that? I think those are the type of things that I would try to go for. Do you have any other favorite PM books or resources you like or refer to often? Yes, so I would say especially, I know like I said in the beginning, coming from a non-traditional background, same thing. If you're coming from a non-traditional background, I really like Swipe to Unlock. It's not necessarily a PM book, but it breaks down a lot of just popular technologies in very like layman's terms, and also just kind of explains how, those technologies work, and I think it can be really cool and super helpful. Um, Look, I'll answer one more question because um, I know we're like reaching time. So I will just answer one more question. Um, if you're already in product and want to stand out in this market, any tips on this? Um, Yes, so a couple of things. So one is I think you want to show that you're always learning, always adapting and not stagnant if you're already in product, because I think it can be pretty easy to kind of fall into that trap, and like always exploring new spaces and whatnot. And then I think beyond that, I would say like make sure your resume is just like top notch, super like clean, super up to date, like portraying all those impact metrics and whatnot, is kind of what I would say to stand out. I think I'm going slightly over, so I'm going to move on and wrap this up real quick. Oh, the
Yeah,
give.
so I've sent it in the chat, but our giveaway winner is Ruth Wachira. So our team will be in touch soon over email about your free spot in the boot camp. So congratulations, Ruth.
Perfect. And just real quick, just a quick plug, feel free to book a free intro call here. If you're interested in coaching or if you're interested in any type of mentorship or anything like that, I help with resume reviews, mock interviews, and whatnot. And for this week only, I'm giving a 10% off all services, so whether it's hourly or package discount. But, you know, I would say book an intro call, use the discount code. Yeah, we can talk more there. But yeah, that's it from me, I think. Thank you so much for joining.